It's amazing how many people I speak to that have never really actually paid that much attention to counterbalance. And that's almost certainly because they've just never been shown how to simply counterbalance and why you actually need to. It is so simple to do, and it makes such a huge difference when you're working with a tripod. So I thought we'd quickly go over first what counterbalance is and why it actually makes a difference. So this is a correctly counterbalanced tripod setup. Notice without locking the camera down at all, I can move to any position and just simply let go of the camera and it will stay there. And this is important for several reasons. First and foremost, it gives you full control of your rig. You know the camera isn't going to drop down or swing uncontrollably. It also means that you can change the framing on a shot subtly without having to lock and unlock your tilt and pan locks, as that can take time to do and it can introduce camera shake, which could affect your shots. But where it makes the most difference though is if you're doing lots of panning and tilting around. Not having to fight against physics and gravity will make your life much easier and make any tilts that you do smoother as well. If your counterbalance isn't set right, you're going to need to apply different amounts of pressure as the tilt happens to keep that same consistent speed. With a correct counterbalance level, the tripod doesn't fight you at all as you pan and you tilt around. So if you're trying to follow subjects, particularly on a long lens, maybe sports or wildlife, that kind of subject, having a correctly set counterbalance level is going to make your life so much easier. So, how do we actually set the counterbalance? We're going to look at three very different levels of tripod here, from very lightweight and affordable to decent mid-range to high-end. But the concept is exactly the same on all three. You make sure your camera is centrally balanced, and then you make sure the right level of counterbalance is set on the tripod. The big difference between these tripod levels is how much control you actually get over that counterbalance. Let's start with the mid-range. This is the GH06 head from eImage. It's about a 400-pound fluid head, popular for cameras like the Sony FS7, Canon C200, that sort of level of camera. It has 5 steps of counterbalance. And as we can see, if I unlock this tripod, it's not balanced in any way at the moment. No longer is it staying in one place. First, we have to get the camera's center of balance of gravity right. To do this, you take off all the counterbalance, and with the camera just level like this, horizontally level, carefully let go slightly and see which way it falls. And you then have to slide the camera on its plate until you find the point where it's balanced. And normally you can just do this with the tripod plate itself, but it gets easier if you have a camera rig with a sliding dovetail plate or a higher end tripod with a sliding top plate. So once you have it roughly balanced on top, we have to add the counterbalance. I like to add one level of friction here just to stop the camera moving too quickly and being too unwieldy. And the process is to simply add more counterbalance until we go too far, then dial it back to the right level. So with no counterbalance applied, notice how if I tilt forwards and just let go, the camera just drops. And if I tilt backwards and let go, the camera does the same. So if I dial the counterbalance all the way up instead, notice how the camera pings back instead of dropping. We want to find the middle ground between those two, where the camera doesn't move. So we start low with nothing, and then we go up through the levels until the camera moves the least. And you might well find that the camera doesn't move when you're tilted one way, but moves slightly when you're tilted the other. This means you're not quite centrally balanced on top. So just slightly shift the camera until it seems right. You may also find that you can't get the camera to remain perfectly still because you're just choosing between these 5 preset levels of counterbalance. And this is the disadvantage of heads like this, and a reason you'd step up to more expensive ones. But for now, if you can't quite get the right level, you can either add or take away weight from your camera rig to adjust further, or just leave it as it is and accept that it's no longer perfect. But if you do, it's best to lean on the side of too much counterbalance rather than too little. As if I have the choice between my camera pinging back to be upright like this, or not having enough counterbalance and falling, potentially unbalancing the whole tripod or just banging against the leg of the tripod, I know which one I'd choose. Let's look at how this works with much smaller and cheaper tripod head. This is one of my favourite lightweight small tripod heads, the iFootage Komodo K5. It's popular with small mirrorless cameras like the Sony a7S or Panasonic GH5, that sort of camera. And this has no friction control and no counterbalance control. But as you can see, if I tilt the camera forward, the camera doesn't just drop. So it does have counterbalance, it pings back. But it's just that you can't control that counterbalance. So all you can really do with a tripod head like this is balance the camera on top as best you can. On the other end of the spectrum, this is the O'Connor 1040 head. And this is for big cameras and big lenses, your ARRI cameras, the C700 from Canon, RED cameras with big lenses, that level of camera system. It's a fantastic head with a sizable price tag, but this gives you all of the precise control you need to get whatever camera you put on top balanced perfectly. Rather than steps of counterbalance, you have a dial, so you can precisely control how much counterbalance is applied and get it precisely right. There's of course lots of options at this high-end level, lots of products that do this in different ways. There's some great heads from people like Miller and Satchler who give you lots of steps of counterbalance for speed rather than a continuous system like the O'Connor, as of course having to turn and turn a dial to change that counterbalance is a much slower process than simply selecting the right level from a preset level. So if you can choose speed or control. It's about finding the right system that works for your work and for your needs up at this high end. So hopefully that helps give you an idea as to why counterbalance is so important. If you've got any questions at all, just let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you're looking to buy a tripod for yourself, just head over to proav.co.uk. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.